Up next, we have another amazing speaker in artificial intelligence. This speaker will talk about transform your business operations with GPTs. Use Custom GPTs to build your virtual team. An operations and governance pro, she fine-tunes GPTs to match real workflows and client needs. Her focus, seamless integration, measurable ROI, zero drama. Let's welcome Elizabeth Fortunato. So join me in the comments as we welcome our next speaker.
So welcome, everyone, as we've already said. So happy to be here. Right now, if you think about it, AI is absolutely everywhere. We don't think about it as being everywhere, but it's right now they talk about it. I hear it all the time in the news. It's in the power centers. It's in our data centers. It's in robotics. It's in connectivity. And they even talk about it with cooling. Like, what are we going to do to cool these data centers? There's CPUs, GPUs, all of it whittles down to AI. It is everywhere. It's all around us. Doesn't mean it's scary. It's just all around us. And we even had a recent event that we can really brought it home for many of us. I don't know how many of you thought that, oh my gosh, that doesn't affect me. I can't order something on Amazon. Well, it affected a lot of services. So it's really, really, truly impacting. And we got to think about how we're going to be doing it and doing it safely. Well, also, when I first got into this, I was really thinking, okay, how can I help my business? How can I do things? I'm an independent contractor already. We've had a business for 12 years. I've been in the IT space. And I started looking into AI a long time ago when I was still working for the federal government. And then when I moved out of that position into private practice, I looked at the AI space and it kept growing and growing and growing. It was completely overwhelming. I started looking at it going, well, how can I automate things? How can I make things easier? Where do I start? And the more I looked into it, the more I realized it was complete madness. I was so overwhelmed. Everywhere I turned, there was a new product, a new service. They're like, you don't have to code anything. Just jump in N8N. So I took all these Coursera things and I was driving myself crazy. So I understand AI can be overwhelming. It can be a question of where you want to start. So that's where I'm actually approaching all of this today. I really want to break it down and say, where can you start? Start small and then build into it so that you can actually have it as something you can eat, as not opposed to this huge buffet that's in front of you every day. And you're like, what do I do with all this information? Because that's really where I was. So I'm going to talk to you about how to transform your business operations with GPTs. And GPTs are something you can do. You can build out multiple GPTs. They can be virtual teammates, or they can augment actually what you're doing already. Before I jump in, let me tell you a little bit about me. I mentioned already that I have been in the IT space for 30 years. I actually started off with an undergraduate degree in mathematics, got a master's degree later on after I paid off that debt, and then got another debt and then paid off that debt. And so I've been working through IT and living in the IT space for many, many years. I ended my career in the federal space with more strategy and IT implementation work. And I also support a small businesses where where I've also been able to focus, where we do a lot of strategic development and a lot of global network space. So we are very technical in our business. But I also like to do the mission and alignment part with different partners so that we can support each other. So I'm really super excited to be in the AI space. I think it's really, really, truly a gift that we all have the opportunity to jump in. I don't know if any of you remember the internet days, the beginning of the internet. I was working for a small business that time, and I mentioned that we needed to be where our clients were. We need to think about where our clients were. I had library contracts, and librarians were the first people beyond the educational space of really wanting to take stuff onto the internet because they wanted to make everything accessible. And I spoke up about it with this company. I was 20 years old, didn't have a lot of credibility at that time, but I spoke up about it and said, we need to be where our customers are. And guess what they said? That's a trend. That's just a fad. It's going away. Well, I can tell you right now, AI is not going away and it's here to stay. And we got to take advantage of it. And we got to make it work for us. And that's what you're seeing today with a lot of speakers. They're making it work for them in amazing ways. So let's get started. So really, what is a GPT? Well, a GPT is really a generative pre-trained transformer. It's a mouthful, but really what it means is that it's somewhat of an LLM model. It takes these powerful AI tools and does human-like text with it. So really it's a text tool, a GPT is. It doesn't end there though. It can handle tasks like answering questions, creating content, and as you saw, creating animation. So it's really, really powerful. And what makes it even more powerful is when you tailor it. You tailor it to fit your need. Think about it. Think about your business and really what you can do with a GPT. Think about how you can customize and make things work for you. So that's what I want to talk about. So why do you want to do this? Really, one of the things that we face a lot in businesses, and we also face in the government workforce, was how do you retain institutional knowledge? People who have been with you for a very long time, who go to retire, or people in your business who are looking to transition to something else, or you've been forced to transition, and someone you really want to maintain that institutional knowledge. So really, a GPT can be used to load all this information into it, train it on what that person is doing, and augment it to train a new person, especially if you have a retirement, someone who's got all that information in their head. And it's so important to capture it. The other thing is you get consistent outcomes when you do a GPT, a custom GPT. You can put all the information in, the GPT will respond in a consistent way. So if you're a business owner and you have to train new employees, think about it that way, like how much time it takes to train a new employee, how much effort you have to do, and you want them to be trained consistently. So if you have more than one new employee, or, some examples I can think of is, I know somebody who's actually training for 2 weeks to become a salesperson for a funeral home. Can you believe that? 2 weeks to be a funeral home salesperson. You wouldn't think it's that complicated, but the way she explained it was super complicated. There are so many different ways to get buried. Terrible topic, I know, but so many ways to get buried that she has to be trained on. And she had to really think about that and understand it. Well, guess what? You could actually put all of that information into a GPT. And then if later on she's working with a customer and has to do a sale, and she's like, oh gosh, what did they tell me about that? She could look it up. She could put it into her chat, her custom chat. It could answer it and tell her, oh, well, this is what you should recommend for this particular client. Who would have thought? Veterinarians. I had my pet die recently, and the person that answers the phone really doesn't always know how to, respond and be supportive to you when you call in because you're trying to pick up your pet's ashes. I know, again, sorry for the death stories, terrible, terrible stories, but they do relate into how you can customize things and things in areas you haven't really thought about. But that person really didn't know how to respond. And it could have really told them, hey, this is how, from the vet's perspective or the business owner's perspective, how I want you to respond when someone calls in. Again, it's just a way to augment yourself and to train people and to train them in a way that you want as a repeatable service. So, what are the 5 steps to creating your own custom GPT? Well, they can be fairly quick. Chat makes it fairly simple. Perplexity has now offered a new service and a new way to do it as well. So they're expanding. The GPT engines and the AI service and tools are expanding in this space and how you can really customize. Chat has done a really good job in doing this. So they allow you to do it in 2 ways. You can do a customization, which you write in all the code, which is the route I took specifically for what I wanted to do. And you can also have chat actually help you fill out these questions. So the first thing you really need to do is define that role. Figure out what you want your GPT to do. Like I said, do you want it to answer the phone, be sympathetic and encouraging to someone who calls in? Do you want it to understand some of your business processes? And even think about it in a regulatory environment where you have to ensure that people are trained very, very well to respond in a specific way. Regulatory space is very much, is very much in need of this because you really want to have your employee or your person answer in a very specific fashion. And GPT can actually be trained to do that. So then what you want to do when you figure out that role you want that GPT to play, then you need to write the instructions. The instructions are going to be very specific. And I'll get into that into some more detail in the next couple slides. Also, upload the knowledge. You really want to upload knowledge that your GPT can use. This can be in the form of PDFs, SOPs, and other files. Then you want to enable capabilities. This is probably the shortest step, but it's also a very important step, and I'll go through that. Then there's another step in here that I don't have very well done because it is an optional step, but I did it for my GPT. So we'll go through that as well. And that's creating actions. Actions are really more in sort of a coding environment, but don't be afraid. You can have GPT, and any AI tool nowadays help you with the coding. So don't be scared away by that. Everyone has shown that already today. And then you want to test and publish and test and publish and test and publish. So these are the ways you refine your GPT and make it the best partner for you and what you're trying to do. So let's get into it. So I created something that I thought would be super fun because in the past year, I boat. I'm now a licensed 50-ton captain for boating, and that required a lot of training. I had to go through a 2-week intensive course, take an examination, had to understand everything from weather patterns to navigation rules to tides and currents to doing old school chart reading. It was very, very comprehensive. So I thought, I'm never going to be able to retain all this stuff when I get out on the water. And they tell you have to keep these books on your boat and everything. I thought, well, you know what? Why don't I just see what will happen if I upload this all into a GPT and customize it? So the first thing I did was, again, like I said, define that purpose, define what I want it to do. And it's just a fun example to be able to share. And it's also kind of useful. I've actually used it a couple of times to help me. So the next slide you're going to see is really when you put in that core framework. What this is that once you know what your role to do, you need to build out what that role should be. So I wanted a first mate of a boat called Amplify. And I wanted to use a friendly Australian accent. So that was what I kind of started with. And I also I asked GPT to help me write a job description. So that's where I started. And then we get more explicit as we go on. So then these are the instructions I have in plain text. These instructions now are about maybe 4 pages. And that's important because you constantly go back and you look at them and you modify them. And you'll see why, as I go on, why you want to do that. But you tell your GPT how you want it to respond. You tell it, even if you want it to respond in a very specific way or when you want to reference something. So next we'll get into that is talk about referencing materials because you want to train your GPT on how to use the materials you're giving it. So think about knowledge of all the things that I was handed in my first job. So like I said, this is just my example because it was fun for me to build and do. But think about all those books and SOPs and everything they used to hand you back in the day when you started a job. And they said, look through all of these, memorize all of these. You have to learn all this before you can do your job. And it would take like 6 months before you feel like you could really understand it. And you got all these tabs, you got all the books. Well, you know what? If you have them all electronic already, you just upload them in your GPT already. That's it. And you tell your GPT to use them. It's incredible. For me, it took about 8 hours because I had to build my GPT for my systems. So what I did to build that SOP is also kind of interesting because I took every single system on this boat and I uploaded the manuals and everything I could find on the internet. And everything I could tell my SOP that I wanted it to include about this boat so that I could then have my GPT reference it. And that SOP took me probably the longest. The rest of the documentation I found online, I was able to upload and able to tell my GPT to use. But that part of it was really pretty intensive for me because I didn't have it. Now, if you're a business, you have SOPs you use every day. You think about code that you're doing, say you're a construction person or you're in any environment where you have to have code, electrician where you have to reference the code gets updated. Guess what? You can upload that in a second in your GPT and tell them how to reference the new code. Amazing. And even upload, something you've developed in terms of wiring diagram. Amazing, right? But that's what your GPT can do. So then the next part, like I said, this is the easier part. But it also can be harder because you really want to make sure you tell your GPT to reference these things. So these are actually just check boxes when you're going in and building your GPT. web search, Canvas. And Canvas is a tool that I hope someone goes through this week. It's really powerful and very cool feature of ChatGPT, but I'm not going to spend time going to that, but it's very powerful. And then there's image generation if you want it to create images, and code interpretation and data analysis. I select all of these because at some point I'm going to integrate my GPT a little bit further into the data analysis when I integrate it into the actual systems. But you also have to go back. This is the important part with this part of it is just check boxes. It's a 5-minute exercise, but you need to tell your GPT to use those things. And I'll go through why, and I show you my example. If your GPT doesn't know to go out and search the web, it kind of acts a little dumb, to be honest. It doesn't really do it unless you tell it to do it. So the trick about the custom GPT is you really have to specify what you want it to do. It's not quite as intuitive as your regular chat model because you've trained it and you've isolated it, which can be really, really good for regulatory, but also you need to make sure you keep it intelligent and you enable it to reference those things that you're putting up into your GPT. So let's go to the last step. So the last step was, like I said, this is an optional step. You don't necessarily have to do this with your GPT. A lot of us may go down this road when you get into custom GPT design. And that's simply because I wanted my GPT to go out and be able to reference the weather anywhere I started. So I wanted to start, not that I live in New York or Atlanta, but say I wanted to start in New York and I wanted to do cruise planning from New York. Then I could have the GPT understand where that location was. So I had to go out and figure out what the weather was in that location. So I had to do some actions in there, do an API and make that work. So that's what this is. This is that additional customization you can do if you want your GPT to use actions. And I've done some research on this and I'm not sure the limit, to be honest. OpenAI has not listed limits in how many actions you can have. I assume you could test this to the fullest and it may eventually break it. But right now, they're not telling you there's a limit on adding in actions. However, I would start small and I start with a few actions, maybe just one action, see how it works, which is what I did. And then I didn't mention on the other one, but the slide before that with the SOPs and documents, you can really only have 20. That is a limit on there, but the actions are not limiting you yet. So I added all this. Now, do you want to see her? Do you want to see my first mate? So meet my first mate. The first thing I wanted to do was do a trip down the Chesapeake to the Solomon's Island. And I wanted to figure out when I could leave. So just pause that 1 second. That went on the screen pretty quickly. That was actually using the API that I just showed you a minute ago. That's what happened right there. So now she checks the weather and looks at the weather conditions and says, there's a departure window here. Would you like me to look at the tides and currents? So again, I'm going to pause. Tides and currents are actually tables and huge documents that you get from NOAA, and they come in a PDF. I uploaded that in my GBT. So that's what she's doing now. So she's looking at the tides and currents and also looking at some other information saying, you know what, your best departure time is 10:30 to 11:30. Take note of that. So then it asked me another thing. Do you want me to search the web for additional information on the wind? I don't have this built in, but I was like, absolutely. And this is again using the API. And notice right here, she answers with righto, because she's Australian. I told her to have an Australian accent because I really thought that would be fun. And then she goes on to talk about the tides and currents. She looks for it. And guess what? She's amazing. She recalculated. She said, based on all the information that you've asked me to do, guess what I did? I changed the departure window. I wouldn't have thought to do that. I have my 50-ton captain's license. I'm like, amazing. Look at that. Look how smart you are. So she did change the departure window. Next thing we wanted to do is in the boat, you want to do system checks. So I do want to point out, so system checks were really very interesting. So because I don't have this hooked up to real data on my boat, but I could. This is actually something you can do. This is something I plan to expand into. But I did tell it to format the data in such a way that's easy for me to look at as a checklist. I told it to do this in my custom instructions. I said, I need you to look at this and I need you to format the data in a way that I can easily download and walk through my boat and do as a checklist. And she's so smart. She's a great first mate so far. So she goes through and does these system checks. And then it says, okay, you want me to do a final, run through and tell you all the things you need to do? I'm like, yes. And what about fuel capacity? I don't want to run out of gas. And she did that because I put that in the SOP. So here she goes. Righto, Captain. Things are looking good for ahead. Here's her final departure. She tells me all the weather, the window I should leave in, how long it's going to take me, knowing my fuel capacity, knowing what speed I want to go. And guess what? I'm on my way. Bon voyage. And it took me all of like 5 minutes to get that information. Where as a trained and certified captain, I can tell you that's hours of my time. So final thoughts. Think about something about how you want to embed AI into your operations. Think about how it can be a helpful, smart, adaptable teammate. Think about things that take you a lot of time, or things that are repeatable processes, or things that you want new employees to be able to rely on and do repeatedly, and do it in such a way that represents you, either your regulatory environment, your own SOPs, like procedures that you want to have done. So start there. Think about that and start there. For best results, you want to build, test, and iterate. And you really want to keep your GPT continuing to learn. So just if you think about it, whenever you've started a new job or you're training a new employee, they don't learn everything in a day. So your GPT is not going to learn everything in a day either. I spent about 20 hours building my GPT, and that's primarily a good portion of that was because I had to build the SOPs, but you can do this in a day. You really can. But think about it. No one gets trained in a day. I mean, GPT is really super smart, but you have to make it smart and work for you. So iterate on it, test it, throw it to some people, just say, I want you to test this, and look at it over and over again. And then as you learn, put it back in your GPT, continue to grow. Because like I said, some of these things there's no limit on right now. Right. I should note that creating your own custom GPT is not with the free version. I've seen some stuff in the chat earlier asking about the cost of these things. So you do need to have a pro version to create a custom GPT. But the ability and the capabilities in there could really that $20 you spend a month, this is in the OpenAI environment, but those $20 you spend a month could really, really save you a lot in your training time and allow you to go off and do other things in your business that require your expertise that you already know. So what I've done is I've created a free guide for you all. I have a QR code over there. I've created a free guide on how to set up a custom GPT. I put in there like the why it's important in this section, the stuff I went through in these slides, how you should do it, some quick start actions that you can do. If you want to connect with me on social media, I have some of that information later on in the last slide. Connect with me, and then we can maybe talk about how I can help you with some prompts on this.